Okay, now we're live. What I want to do first is, did anybody not get the email last week about the pitch competition? Anybody have no idea what I'm talking about?
I got the email.
You got the email? Okay. Did anybody try to go to the link coaccelerator.com and see what that is, what that's about? Okay. All right. So I'm hoping that everyone will, and I hope that you'll even use some of the ideas in this course that we're going to work on as class projects for the competition. That would be a completely sensible, useful thing to do, justifiable, whatever. So let's go to coaccelerator.com and see what it is. What is there? All right, so this is Coaccelerator U. It says, do you have a world-changing idea? Do you have what it takes to be a startup founder? I would rather have that first line have said, do you have a great idea, not world-changing idea. World-changing is very misleading to people. I've found in previous classes, I asked somebody to come up with an idea that, be a world-changing idea, and they'll come up with a plan to completely alleviate poverty in third world countries, right? It's, that's been tried for thousands of years, and then that's just, there's not one person. And the good thing is, there isn't one person who can do that, right? So the fact that one person wasn't able to do it, don't hold that person accountable to that. The fact that one person tries to do it might say something about that one person. You might have might think a little too much of yourself if you actually think you could do that, right? So, these kind of world-changing things, certainly we talked about last week, Apple and Steve Jobs, there's some world-changing innovation going on there, right? But I don't think he necessarily set out to change the world initially, right? He probably didn't, his first gig was at Atari making games, and that was fun, right? So I think his biggest thing was to have fun with the stuff he was doing, and then get it to a lot of other people, and have a good time doing it, make some money, whatever, and then it ended up, it did change the world, right? But we don't usually set out to, and he certainly didn't do it alone anyway. So anyway, just, a good idea, at least that you think's a good idea. It doesn't even, nobody else might think it is, but as long as you do, it doesn't really matter. You try it and put it in front of some people and see what people think, see what the feedback is, and whatever. So, Coaccelerator U, we're working with Cowork MYR, which is in Myrtle Beach, and they are pretty much an incubator. They're a private, for-profit company that what they do is they sell memberships to the workspace in their place of business, right? And so it's in an old bank building. You go in, there's like a security code on the door, but if you have a membership, that gives you access to the workspace just like you would it's like renting a office, right? Except it's like a shared space, open tables, like a coffee shop or something, if you want to think of it like that, or more like the way Google or Apple would actually set up its kind of think spaces, right? So that it encourages collaboration and some kind of cross-thinking or cross-disciplines. So, if you've got somebody in there who's working on website development, somebody else is working on iPhone app development, somebody else is doing a real physical shop that maybe would benefit from a good website and an app, that type of thing. Then they can all get together, and all of a sudden maybe you've created a company that, and that's what they do, they're creating these things kind of from scratch. That might have some legs and really do something, and you bring people together of different mindsets and skills and all of that, see what can happen. But at its most basic level, it's just a place where you go and work. So if you have like a consulting firm, or if you're maybe a graphic designer, for example, and you do media arts, you work out of Cowork MYR instead of somewhere else, $250 a month. You've got Wi-Fi, coffee room, conference room. There's even a 3D printer, in there that you can use if you're like inventing stuff and trying out prototypes, or somebody else has maybe got a prototype and they want you to design something around it. They say, well, if you would just kind of, here's the prototype. We don't want to send it to you, but here's our CAD drawings. They'll email it to you, whatever. You run it in there, and you got the prototype in your office now, right? And you're looking at it, and you're thinking about a logo or a design for the website or whatever it might be for their marketing or something like that. That's what the place is about. And so, and they've also got a lot of experience in technology startups is their primary thing. But the fact that most businesses today utilize technology in some way. So any kind of startup could benefit from their services for the most part, right? Yeah.
Do they have like software and expertise in like designing, not just printing your logos and things like that, but actually helping you design?
Yeah. In fact, this thing here was all designed by their folks, right? We worked for a long time on what is this going to look like? CoCelerator U. They had the domain name. They've had it for a while. They wanted to partner with us, and they just finally, we went back and forth, used Google Docs actually, and they'd post things up there, we'd look at them. All this stuff actually came from that. There were like 5 of us. It all started from a student that was here last year. She was a Wallfellow, now she's in New York, I think, with Citibank, doing her internship. I think that's who she's with. She kind of brought us all together. What we wanted to do last year, this is our 3rd year for the business plan competition, and this year kind of had the idea, you know what, let's let students run this competition. Let's let students figure out the best way to market it, because you guys know better than us how you see things, what's receptive to you. So we did a complete redesign of everything, and student involvement was, in fact, the guy that designed this logo is also a student, I think, in our graphic arts department at the university. And so he finally came up with this one, and everybody liked that. And so that's the logo. And yeah, so there's people like that there. One of my former students who is going to Australia this summer to show basically a 3D recreation of Athens, Greece that he built over in the graphic art department. They've been doing all kinds of pretty wild stuff.
Is it Brandon?
It's Brandon, yeah. Yeah, Brandon and I worked together last year. We were trying to create it was actually a pencil, a cartoon pencil that was going to narrate something called iPencil by a fellow named Leonard Reed in the 1950s. And it's a pretty good example of how markets work. You know, iPencil, this little 5-page story, I think it is. And we were going to try to create a movie of it using the pencil as the narrator. And Brandon created the pencil in full animation and had about 30 seconds of a clip that was kind of walking through, and it showed the family tree and showed how the pencil was actually made, and it became the pencil, the narrator, right? And that took him like a semester to do that, right? Because he was teaching himself everything, and pretty much in that period he changed his major to, I think, interdisciplinary studies, economics, and graphic media arts, I think is what it was, because he realized this is the kind of stuff that he wants to do. And when he went over there to that department, his skill level really kind of went through the roof. And so he's been creating this Athens, Greece recreation using some kind of 3D programming. It's basically like you can take a tour through Athens, Greece as it's being built, and it's all to scale. Pretty neat stuff. He's another person. He was in the first meeting with Cowork NYR to talk about CoCelerator U and another student. So it's a pretty interesting place. And the idea is, if you place first, second, third so far, we might even go beyond that, you will get, as the prizes, you'll get space time down at Cowork NYR, and with that mentor time with the folks down there that are working on projects. And a lot of people have some really good experience in tech startups and just all kinds of. I met one person who has a toy company in Myrtle Beach, moved here from, I think it was California, and bought out a company, and then ended up turning it into just a full-blown multi-product kind of toy/hobby company. The first thing they did was frog aquariums. They bought a frog aquarium company, and then when the capital markets kind of went south in 2008, they realized they needed to get more personally involved with this, whereas they didn't think that was going to be the case in the beginning, and they basically became owners and operators of this frog aquarium company, and they kind of had to just roll up their sleeves and figure out how we're going to do this. And they did it well and started buying up other products, and now they're kind of like a mini conglomeration that takes on different things that are kind of similar capabilities from market-based management, similar capabilities. We could go into this area and make something of it. So they kind of do that. So there's a lot of neat, interesting people down there that are just really energetic, action-oriented, entrepreneurial type, and it's a pretty neat atmosphere. So just to be in there, when you walk in, you feel like you've kind of left Myrtle Beach and you're in Silicon Valley. Like the orange plus here is on their sign outside. You go in, the walls are white with like gray tones. It looks like Steve Jobs designed the place. I mean, that's just what it looks like when you walk in. So it's pretty interesting, energetic atmosphere. And so the design is, it's like an incubator. So you have an idea, you go down there, you work on it, and you'll get help and try to turn it into a real thing. So you have an idea for this competition. Here's the key deadlines. April 2nd is the deadline to submit your intent to participate. April 12th is the deadline to submit your pitch deck. And under here it says, what is a pitch deck? We'll explain this after April 2nd. Right, so this is all kind of new here. We used to call ours a business plan competition. The word pitch was never even part of this. It's really new to us, and we're really leaning on them for assistance in kind of bringing us through this thing. And the cool thing is, it's a lot simpler than a full-blown business plan competition. The business plan competition, the barrier to entry is pretty high, because the students thought they had to have these full-blown pro forma financial statements of this idea that they really had just come up with maybe within the last couple of months, and it was just too overwhelming to think you could come up with financial statements for something that doesn't even exist yet, right? And so a lot of people would just drop out of the competition. So these pitch competitions are a little bit different. The market research has to be there solid. You know what this market is you're getting into. You've got good ideas about how this would work in the marketplace, who you'd be competing against, why it would be profitable, but you might not have actual historical financials, right? Have not, and in our case, certainly not, right? Most of you in here, it's not going to be the case that you would have at all. And most of the people that are in the competition from a university, they do a lot of these pitch competitions in the community, where the people actually do have businesses, they've been off the ground, running for maybe a year or two, they've got some historical financials. That's not going to be the case for the most part in the university setting, right? So we don't expect that at all. All right, April 26th is the live pitch day. So the finalists will be pitching their ideas to a panel of judges, right? And the judges will be just business people, entrepreneurs in different industries, could be, and we're going to wait and select a panel of judges once we see what is the kind of major mix of ideas that's submitted, so that maybe we can draw some judges. And the idea, they're not just judges, these are mentors. After the thing's over, they're mentors. So if we have a bunch of ideas that are in a similar kind of sector, we'll have a judge on the panel that's got experience in that sector, right? And not really just for the purpose of judging, but for after the fact, to really help the person. The whole idea is to take it to the next level, right? That's the point of it. Any questions so far? So this is the pitch competition, and you can see basically it's designed to where you kind of think of some ideas you probably had in your mind for a long time, you just never done anything with them, and the deadlines are quick. March 21st, the competition really began March 23rd. April 2nd, the deadline to submit your intent to participate. There's not much required there at that point. And then you have April 12th, you submit some of the more meat of the thing, some documentation, demonstration that you have researched this idea, and you do know this is more than just some harebrained idea that you just thought of and haven't given a moment's thought to after that. And then April 26th is the live pitch day, very similar to like the example that I sent you guys, the link, 60 seconds or less, you know, sell your idea. And that's pretty much the way it will work. So it would be great if the projects that you're working on in here, you guys submitted those as a into this competition, right? And one of you, if you do it in teams, one of you, or it could be the whole group. The whole group can certainly go and make the pitch. Just figure out who's going to be the main person to talk or whatever, and just take part in it. So it's you know, kind of it can be I know it can be an intimidating thing to get up in front of other people, particularly judges, you know, and talk about your thing. But another idea of the whole point is you don't let things like that stop you from doing something that you really want to do, right? Just kind of jump in and give it a shot. And beyond anything else, just the fact that you're there kind of puts you in a place separate from the majority of people, right? The fact that you're willing to go and just try it, even if you're uneasy about it, whatever, just give it a shot, you know, good practice. Yeah?
Is there Q&A or feedback on the spot, or is it just one-way pitching, you're done, you walk off, and then you get your feedback later?
There'll be feedback throughout this process, getting up to the 26th, right? And then on the thing of the 26th, what'll probably happen, depends how many entrants we have. If there are a lot of finalists pitching on the 26th, then the feedback, it might be a judging round, and then they kind of hold back, and maybe they kind of select the top 5 out of, suppose 15 or 20 went on the 26th. And then they kind of select off, you know, initial impression and the information that's been submitted, the top 5. And then there might be a second pitch, right? So we obviously were kind of in the works of designing how that day is going to go, and it really does depend on how many people end up submitting, what kind of ideas we get, all that kind of thing. And so you can imagine the fewer people there are in let's say, the last round, the more talking there would be between the judges, the more feedback, more questions, that type of thing, to finally then decide on the actual winners, the overall winners.
You said this is the first time it's been structured like this?
Yeah.
So this is the template?
Yeah. So that's here, right? These folks have been involved in pitch competitions all over the place. Ours has previously been a business plan competition where they send in a full business plan about a month ahead. The judges read through the business plans and they score them. And then on the business plan competition day, the oral presentation, similar thing, big PowerPoint presentation, might take, some contestants have taken like 30 minutes to get through their presentation. And then there's questions in the middle of it. And then they go to a room and score the presentations in combination with the written, come back, we announce the winners. That's how it's going to pass. Right? So this will be a little bit different in that regard. And it's really more, the idea is there's a lot of good ideas that maybe even the person doing it, on your own, it's unlikely you'd have all the tools to put everything together financially, whatever it might be, to actually take it to the next level. So you want to get in front of people, and inevitably there's got to be some things that are missing in your, you know, your talk and your idea and all that. But the idea is you get with other people that can bring some of these missing components, and as a team, then you work to bring it into reality. That type of thing. All right. And so what you do, you go here. If you log in, this is what we need by April 2nd. The top says, what's your name? You just enter your name. This one says, what's your email address? It has to be a coastal email address. We won't accept anything else. And then give us one sentence, hint, about what you plan to pitch. That's it. So by April 2nd, all you have to do is one sentence. Just put it in here. And then we just have an idea of what it is. Yeah.
So if we do it with a group, do we put all of our group's names or just pick one person?
Yeah, I think you could. I think if you put everyone's names, then it would accept that, and it's the group, right? And you could even put group, you know, some kind of identifier. I'm not sure how the database is structured behind it, but I would think that probably it's an open field, and whatever goes in there, it's just going to capture it all. That'd be my guess. So yeah, definitely do it like that. So given that, right now, does anybody, the idea is the assignment, I haven't read your discussion posts because they were due last night, right? So I haven't looked at them yet. But the idea was figure on an idea you're going to do for the course, get your team together. So who has selected team? What's the team so far?
Me and Jake, we're working together on a soccer show. I like working on a paralegal project.
Okay, you want okay.
I'm thinking about joining the paralegal.
Joining the paralegal. All right, and then what was yours?
Me, Kendall, and Cora are going to do the fix-it.
Cool.
Fix it, yeah.
All right. Okay.
I'm by myself doing electric bicycles.
You know what? I just saw something, I think it was over spring break, about electric. Was it in the pitch? No, it was in the email that I sent you guys, the pitch competition at whatever that other school was. I'm pretty sure that was the one. Somebody's idea was electric bicycles.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Which is interesting. I mean,
It's getting popular, and especially in the United States now, because we're kind of lagging behind China and Europe.
Okay.
And I think China sells like 20 million
really?
electric bicycles per year now.
Huh.
It's been increasing since like 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
And Europe is way ahead of us, and usually what the bikes we get are shipped over from Europe,
Okay.
and usually pretty expensive.
Yeah, right,
So,
right.
Yeah, not quite practical for people to buy them here yet.
Right, okay, interesting. Yeah, so I just noticed when I saw that, I knew that you
That's
had
fun.
talked about
Yeah.
that, so it's pretty cool. Now, given that, who would volunteer right now to go ahead and enter your information for the April 2nd part, the deadline to submit your intent to participate, that you're going to participate, and go ahead and submit this information, and let's see that. Okay, you want to do it? All right, go up to this, just fill that in on that computer. We'll just we'll do this now.
So, did you say,
Probably not.
your last name?
Yeah, just put your name, just put it in. I think I registered myself already. I just put Rob Salvino, put my email
So you mind
address.
if I just put my name or put our three names with comments?
Just put
All right, it's a group, yeah.
Yeah.
White.
Huh?
My last name is White.
White?
W-H-I-T.
Kelly.
Sounds like a law firm.
Kelly, you said?
Yep.
Yeah. Like that?
No E in that.
Like that? Is that
And
good
then
enough?
say that it is a group name,
Like this?
or say team members. Yeah, team members.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you put the last names?
Those are,
Those are the
those are the last names.
I mean, first names.
Oh, okay, so put all of them on, okay.
You have two first names?
Yeah.
Okay.
All of it.
What's your first name?
That's who I'm
John.
John?
No, it's for the
That's for John, I'm Kelly.
Hey,
I'm
who's
Randolph
black?
White.
Randolph.
Randolph, I'm sorry.
Randolph White, John Kelly.
PH?
Yes.
Okay, then just put one email in it. Just put,
Who am I?
and if it's, yeah, your team leader then, doesn't mean anything, but,
Okay.
in one sentence about what this is.
Let's see,
So after this went out, actually it took us till Friday. We had a few complications. We actually had to redesign the whole entire website, or create the website, actually. We contracted with the company to do this course. And there were some administrative issues, ended up not getting the paperwork all back and forth in time for Wednesday, and we said, we can't wait. And so these guys obviously can do this stuff. So that night they created a website, this thing here. And
okay.
a company that provides a la carte paralegal services to attorneys who do not have a paralegal staff. Perfect.
Submit?
Yep.
Rejected.
So it says, thanks, we'll be in touch. All right. Thanks, we'll be in touch. And right now, we're just kind of monitoring. The first morning after this went live, like Friday, I think. The email went out Friday, I believe. And I think by Saturday morning, there was like 20-some entrance already. And I asked them, you know, can you sort between, so like I registered myself, right, but I'm not one, so, you know, they haven't started to look yet at who's actually a student contestant versus whatever, so, but we'll see. All right, very cool. Does anybody else want to do that?
Can you go see the pitches, like somebody else?
Oh, yeah, this is going to be, you mean the live competition on 26th?
Yeah. Yeah, would I be able to just go watch? Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah, it's encouraged that you do that, for sure. Yep. We've got the auditorium reserved, actually, the wall auditorium on 26th. We haven't figured if it's going to be in the morning or the afternoon or the middle of the day or whatever. Some of that kind of depends on everybody's involvement too. You know, the judges, when can they be, everybody meeting, and also schedules, you know, all that kind of stuff, so that we can make sure we've got a good time slot, and that we get some good attendance and can watch this thing. So I might even get a band together and play at this thing. We might just have a good time. So now the idea is that it's fun, right? It's just a good time. We come out and it's just going to be an energetic atmosphere. So you know, hopefully it'll be fun. All right. Anybody else want to enter there? What about the bike lane?
I don't know how to think about that. I'm still not sure what area I want to do, either manufacturing or just even what kind of bicycle it would be.
Yeah.
Maybe even provide just the electric motor. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay. All right.
How to get, what angle to go with that yet.
All right.
Would that idea work well with rentals?
Oh, like renting bicycles?
Yeah.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, they would be a little more expensive. So yeah.
Okay, would someone do me a favor
Yeah.
on a sheet of paper that you will give to me after class, the teams and the team members, so that I can have this now and have it, I'll put it in the grade book so that I know who's on what team, what your idea is, and I can have an idea of what we're actually doing in this class.
Also, are they with pitch competition or just put a team?
The teams, business plan teams, or whatever you know, market research teams, yeah.
This is your only classroom, so
What's that?
for this, you're going to go see something.
You see her after like, she's there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so on the discussion post, and I'll look at it after class, be submitted Monday night, the idea was just some basic stuff about each of those components for demand analysis, you know, not a full-blown investigation into the census data or anything like that. Everybody get that?
We did that. Well, I mean, I went over to Guilford, Mass, and we just looked at like U.S. Census Bureau data, like just about like median income. Like, I guess they're like associate soccer with like a lot of foreign people, so I wanted to open it in like a foreign area, because it has a high Latino Hispanic population.
Yeah.
So I just like, we researched that. I mean, we just put some of it on the discussion, not like a full-blown like link or anything or all of it, but we put a little bit of demographics on there.
Okay, yeah, I mean, and that's completely fine. It wasn't discouraging that at all. Just wanted you guys to really just settle on the idea, think about it in some basic terms, just hit every one of them, and that was, yeah.
Are surveys, like one sheet, 10 questions, 10 question surveys, a good way, you would think, to do some market research?
I mean, they're a great way to do market research. The question is, do you have the time to reach the group you're trying to reach and get them answered and get it back and evaluated in the time that you have, right? So the question is the time that you have. What's your deadline, right? What's
April 12th, I think, is the first one.
Okay, so if you're talking about for the pitch competition.
Yeah, if I were using that as a...
Yeah, if you're using that April 12th, you have to ask yourself, when you distribute the survey, how are you going to do that? Is a law firm likely to answer it? So then you have to get an email list of all the law firms that you think would be potential, at least cold calling, you know, targets, right? So that might be every law firm in the Yellow Pages or whatever you call it today, right? In Myrtle Beach. Then you got to get the email address of the email that you think would actually get read, right? And that would get looked at, and then they would actually respond. So you know, I think by the time it would take, let's just say suppose there are 250 law firms in Myrtle Beach, all right? And let's say that you expect to get back maybe 10% of the ones so you're going to get 25 answers, all right? And you're actually going to send 250 surveys. There might be a lot of law firms that you just cannot even find an email, right? And so that means then what do? If you want to still do every 250, you got to call them, right? Or everyone that you just can't find that information online, you've got to call them and get their email address if they use that. And then they might even say, well, we really don't give that out to, it's a who knows what, right? You run into all kinds of issues. And so you got to figure that out. Then you've got to distribute the survey to all the ones you're trying to get to, and then hope they get it back to you but today is the 26th. By April 12th,
Right.
it's less than 3 weeks from right this minute, right?
Sample group's gonna have, because of this deadline.
Yeah.
If I were doing this on my own, obviously I'd have all the time in the world
Yeah.
to do the research, but for something like this, I'd have to make the sample group small,
Yeah.
more controlled.
Right. So what it could be is, instead of a survey, it could be kind of an anecdotal kind of testimonials, right? I mean, it could be, you could call it a survey. You talk to 10 firms, talk to 5 firms, whatever. You have their feedback, and, instead of, saying so many percent say this would be a good, it might be more important to put actually what was said by maybe the owner of the firm or a partner in response to your proposed company, right? That might be more meaningful to even the people judging it, that you've got that type of testimonials, right? So just think about what would you have time to do, and what would be the most meaningful information you could get in that period of time that would help convey to someone else that this idea, has legs.
So in our case, because of the type of service that it is, this would probably be a better approach than just trying to do, research, market research in the traditional sense of, facts and figures.
Well, they're both going to be, so here's the market research that you wouldn't want to do. Who cares what the median household income is in Myrtle Beach for your service? Doesn't matter. Your direct customer is a business, right? What we care about is how many law firms are there, separate independent law firms in the region that you would propose to offer your services to, right? And you also could have short-term and long-term. So you say in the near term, I'm going to focus on, of course, I know you've done stuff out of state already, so you might pick 2 areas and then focus on those and say, there are 250 firms just in this area. The typical firm has how many cases? Whatever metric would be the most important thing for your, right? So that becomes your type of statistics and economic information, not necessarily household information.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's not the kind of information that's just out there on the internet, that you need to go to law firms, and you need to...
Well, not necessarily the case. It could be. I mean, if you go to, there are legal associations. Yeah, I mean, there's so much that is on the internet. You'd be surprised, actually, what you might find in that type of...
I just stocked up the courthouse.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ways, and it might even be, if you went to a law office, if you didn't know, go to one law office that you might know some folks and say, where would I find a list of the number of law firms in this area, average number of employees, whatever.
Oh yeah, there's bar listings that I can.
Yeah, you can.
Stuff I can look at.
Yeah. So, I would. There's a lot of information. Yeah, in a very short amount of time. Yeah. Probably in a couple of hours, you probably have more information than you imagined you would be able to have. Yeah. All right. So that applies to everybody. If your business is not targeting consumers, like household consumers, then the information you need to get might be a little bit different, right? If it's indirectly targeting them, then it's still going to be a very big part of it. Yours is going to be something a little bit different, right? Yeah. So you got to really think about what information would matter. So think in economic terms and think about trying to measure the market. What's the market going to depend on? What's the size of the market going to depend on? And that's the information you need to start looking for. All right. Okay, so we've got paralegal services, Tony, Randolph, John, Mr. and Mrs. Fix-It Workshop, Kendall, Tessa, and Cora, One Stop Soccer Shop, Tim and Jake, Electric Bicycle Company, Spencer. All right, excellent. Good deal. All right, now we'll return the exams. We'll go over these.
We have another exam, right? Is
Yeah,
that-
we have a final exam also, yes.
Is that cumulative, or was that?
Yes. It is cumulative. Emphasis will be different. It'll be more on market research type stuff than the first one. Shade. All right. These grades, I think they range from a high of 91% to a low of, I think the lowest grade was still a 71, I think is what it was. So pretty high score range, really. All right. So the way that I graded them, the first question, just explain how entrepreneurship might occur in large and small organizations by the owners or the employees. That was pretty much questions to see were you paying attention at all, right? And then, if you didn't get full credit, very few people did not get full credit on that question. I just wanted to see how you would talk about entrepreneurship in a general sense. And then we start getting into more of it, so that was like a warm-up. So the second question, how could the 5 dimensions of market-based management, virtues and talents, vision, decision rights, knowledge systems, and incentives help create a more entrepreneurial culture within an organization? Explain your answer. To get full credit on that one, I wanted you to talk from different angles, not just the individual, not just the company, but from both perspectives, and what are the kind of linkages back and forth between the incentives set up for the employee, the incentives for the organization within a market economy, both of those. So to talk about that in a kind of holistic way, right? That you could. So most points were taken off because you focused on one or the other, either the company or the employee, and just went down that one path. All right, the next question. Place each of the following ideas with the correct MBM dimension and explain how and why you made your decisions. Use the space below the grid to provide your answers. So we have an idea on the right, and then we have the market-based management dimension on the left. The ideas were property rights, the profit loss mechanism, creating real value, ethical behavior, and the law of comparative advantage. Now, some of these are certainly not that cut and dry, not necessarily black and white that this MBM dimension goes with this idea. So what I looked at was, if you chose one that, for example, if for decision rights, you chose something other than property rights, the first assumption would be that you would assign that one to property rights. The idea is, in the market economy, or in a free society, we have property rights, this notion of property rights, right? And so you can, if you, for example, let's just say you save money, you work, have an income, and you go out and purchase a home, all right? You got a property right attached to that home, right? So that's it's your place, you've got responsibility of it, and you've also got some benefits as a result of that right? In a corporation, now, some people went down a different road, they talk about that, and they talk about property rights for an employee, but what it is the analogy. In a corporation, you can earn decision rights, right? If you demonstrate capabilities beyond your current position, if you demonstrate that you've got some leadership attributes, and you know, right now you might just be kind of on a team where there's 5 of you that all have the same role, but you seem to every time kind of take a lead and make sure that whatever project the group is doing gets finished, and it gets finished well, and it's presented and defended, and you seem to always be the person that's taking that initiative to be the one to do that. You might say, you have demonstrated capability beyond just being on a team as a role player. We're going to make you a project director starting in 3 months, if you're interested, right? Higher salary might be tied to it, maybe a little bit of travel, whatever, but you also have more responsibility for making some decisions where you don't have to go back to the group and get buy-in, or go to your supervisor and get buy-in. Some of the decisions you make, you're going to be able to make them on the spot, right? And we're going to give you that authority, right? So you're going to earn some decision rights, higher level of authority. It could be, for example, at a bank. You might work as a loan officer, and then they recognize that you know, after a year reviewed your loans, you might have a lower default rate than any of your peers, right? And it might just be, could be location, well, let's just say locations accounted for, and you just kind of do a better job of kind of scrutinizing and following our process in the beginning, so underwriting has an easier job to do, and you kind of do a better job on the front end of seeing when a certain type of person applying for a loan certainly just does not qualify, right? Is not going to qualify, and either direct them into a different type of instrument or whatever it might be. That underwriting would, rather than wait for underwriting to have to send that back, you already know that that's going to happen, right? If there is this this ability for you to do it on the front end, and then it's done correctly, and that's recognized, might increase your authority. Maybe you have a higher loan threshold that you're able to do. Or maybe they move you into commercial. Say, you know what, it seems like you're able to do these type of things. You start working with business clients. And you go into a completely different type thing, higher authority, bigger type loans, and it just continues to go from there possibly, right? Those are decision rights, and the idea is connected with property. Yeah.
So the way it's connected with property rights, it's almost like profit sharing. If you advance so much where you're given managerial or authority to make decisions, you're almost like buying into the company. So an extreme example would be you've earned the right to get profit sharing or something like that, so you have a stake, in other words, so the property rights part of it is.
But it doesn't necessarily have to be profit, right? It doesn't have to be profit sharing alone. It could be that, now it might end up that you make more money as a result of this higher authority, right? But think of it in terms of, if you're given a property right, there's some benefit associated with it, the way you can use your land. So suppose somebody lives in an apartment building as a renter versus, say, on a farm, right? Very different types of property rights there, very different things that you can do that might not have any impact on money you would earn. If somebody in New York City, in Manhattan, living in an apartment, working for a big financial firm, might earn a lot more money than somebody living out on 12 acres in an unincorporated area, but the property rights of the two, just attached to that, one has very well-defined, broad property rights. The other, very narrow, right? And they're actually subbed to somebody else, some other landlord, right? So in that sense, property rights. And then so the decision rights then are more about what can you do within your role. How does your role change as you have demonstrated more capability? In the just analogous to property rights, it's not necessarily that you demonstrate, but it's that you acquire a property right to do something if you want the freedom to do something different, right? If you want to be able to put a truck in the backyard, you're not going to do that in Manhattan, right? So that would mean you're going to have to acquire a property right somewhere else where you can actually do that, right? You acquire decision rights in a firm by demonstrating capabilities, right? So it's just an analogy to it. It's not straightforward. It's because it's profit, right? It's not like that. Yeah, good question, though. The vision, you know, we would expect creating real value. Creating real value is a general vision for a firm. You know, if you pick something else, you know, the idea is just explain how you came on to that. You know, certainly, you know, a knowledge system, profit and loss mechanism, that is a system in place that you can measure profit and loss and track it. That's kind of a knowledge system, right? Now, if you put something else, there's other things that could go there. Incentives, you could tie to the profit and loss mechanism. You know, you could come up with and even in market-based management, that's discussed in the chapter on incentives. It'll talk about profit and loss. So if you pick profit and loss, just explain what you're thinking of it, and it can be the fact that you could have an incentive mechanism in place where you're not only rewarding the employees for the good things that they do for profit, for the bottom line, and giving them a bonus, but if they make a really significant error on the downside, maybe even to the tune of some sort of liability, doing something completely egregious, is there a downside penalty, right, that they know of attached to that before they even do it, right? If you go driving around drinking on the job in the company vehicle, before you even get in the vehicle, then you know that you might lose your job, right? That's just known, so it's tied to that. And that's an extreme example. It would be much more subtle things where, you know, you just kind of just willy-nilly give out loans and don't even submit them to underwriting or whatever, and you know, it ends up you're losing the company money. An insurance agent, for example, goes out and puts risks on the books without ever even looking at them, and these things are very likely to have claims come in all the time, right? Your loss ratio goes up. The company might look at that and say, you know, we're going to lower your authority as an agent, and that hits you right in the pocket, right? So that could happen. So you can see how incentives could be tied to profit and loss, of course, right? And it can also be tied to knowledge systems. So it just depends how you describe it and why, the justification that you used. All right. Question 4. According to the discussion in the Crowley Sobel article, discuss how Adam Smith views self-interest, how the invisible hand principle in a market economy, how the role of incentives in such a society, and what are the opportunities and or challenges for employees in a market economy. And so when you talk about self-interest, the idea is that you just, how did Adam Smith view self-interest? Okay, I want you to describe that, right? And then, how does that tie into the invisible hand? A lot of people had a problem on this exam with the invisible hand principle. What actually is the guiding mechanism, the invisible hand? What does it actually come from? It is not. What's that? It's market forces, right? What are those market forces? What are those signals, for example?
Like, I don't know, what determines, like, supply and demand determine equilibrium price.
Okay, that's a very rote economics answer, right? Supply and demand, equilibrium forces. What would we be seeing in a chart if we were to say that? What are those signals?
Well, how do we determine demand and how do we determine supply in the first place? You gotta think that.
Okay, how do we?
You have things like demographics and...
So what is it?
Prices.
Prices, okay, so price signals, right? Prices are the signal. If price for your good or service starts to go up, or if it starts to go down, right? That's a signal that something is going on in the market, right? If just general demand for a particular service that you have is starting to go down, but you talk to other people, maybe it's at a civic group or whatever it might be, and that's not the case for them. They're having really good results, and you do almost the same exact thing, and you're not having good results. That's also market information. Your competitors are doing very well, and you're not. What's the difference, right? And if you're smart, in a street sense even, you say, Or if you're honest with yourself, you say, there might be something I need to look at, right? Maybe something is different about your market compared to theirs, even though you do the same thing in the same town. Maybe they have a slightly different, maybe they build custom homes and they have a better handle on the higher income group in your area than you do. Maybe they're home builders and so are you. They're not building custom homes and you're trying to build custom homes when your market, the demand is just gone for custom homes, right? So if you're honest and open and you look at that and you say, what are these signals telling me, right? And you try to figure it out. So the invisible hand is, now, the invisible hand is saying that the market will discipline companies, right? And it'll also discipline employees, you know, employees to figure out, you got to do this, this, and this if you want X, right? And for firms, over the long term, it's also a long term, this equilibrium process that you talk about, it's not an instant thing, right? The play back and forth between supply and demand and equilibrium, this is going on throughout time, right? And so,
There's a difference between long run equilibrium and short run equilibrium, right?
okay, so in the long run, it is that there is opportunity for firms to move in and out of the industry, right? So that's a part of it. So in the short run, you could have very undesirable results going on, right? You could have a firm that is abusing employees, contractors, whatever, but it's in an industry that is growing like crazy, and it almost doesn't matter because there's so much business and there are new customers coming in all the time, and this bad firm is really doing bad things, but making a lot of money in the short term, okay? Some people would say, oh, we got to regulate this firm, okay? But that's before you're thinking, hold on a second, how easy can you regulate an issue like that? Would it be better to wait on the market over time? It might only take a few years, and there might be some bad stuff happen, and on a case-by-case basis, punishments are laid out, right, whatever it might be, but over time then, that firm is disciplined. As competition gets stronger, right, and now the repeat customer becomes more important, right, and reputation. Even in a tourist environment, we know here the repeat customer isn't necessarily the first thought of a lot of firms in a tourist environment. We know when we go somewhere as a tourist, because we live here, we know the idea of being treated like a tourist, right, is a negative connotation, right? But even we know in a tourist area, we know where the businesses are, that the restaurants, that they don't treat their people like tourists, right, because they know their reputation goes before them. And that they're going to go home and tell somebody else, and when they send them down, they're going to send them to that restaurant. So, and that way you're not treated like a tourist, not over time, right? And so the discipline mechanism of the invisible hand is these market signals, and it takes place over time, right? The adjustment process takes place over time. I wanted to see that you understood that, right? Let's see. The part C was the role of incentives. And so the role of incentives, one of the major incentives, of course, is the profit, the opportunity to make profit, right? And the opportunity for individuals to make wages, right? And keep those wages and spend them how they see fit, that type of thing. Those are incentives, right? Strong incentives to be productive, to be a good firm, right? And so we could have a really big debate about the need for regulation versus the willingness to let the invisible hand or the market process kind of weed out the bad actors, right? And it depends on individuals' willingness to deal with bad things for a time until they sort themselves out. Once you put a regulation in place, there's a rigidity to a regulation, so that there's a cost associated with regulation. And is it always the right answer? You just put a regulation in place, right? That might not be flexible, and that might be really keeping the extreme minority of the market from doing something that most of the firms just don't even do anyway, right? So there's a cost. And so it's just the idea that you recognize that and can explain that. And the fourth part was opportunities and challenges for individuals, employees in a market economy. And so I wanted you to really talk about both of them, opportunities and challenges, even though the question says and or challenges, but to explain that. So, you know, I don't remember what some of the answers were about opportunities and challenges, but, you know, in a market economy, I mean, certainly the challenge is you're going to deal with unemployment, right? Sometimes the economy takes a turn and the industry you might be in lays off a bunch of people, and you might be one of them, right? In a market economy, that's going to happen, right? So as an employee, what do you do, right? Would you rather it be the case that that was never possible and you had a job for life? What would be the difference? And that sounds nice, right? That sounds great. A job for life. What would it be like if the job you had for life was completely unnecessary and it just became obvious over time that there's really no need for your job, but you had it for life?
You feel like, what am I contributing to society?
You would probably ask that question, right? What am I doing every day?
I'm not
right?
important. You feel like unimportant.
Right. I mean, if there's any sort of reward you get from a job well done, from satisfying customers or your employer, whatever it might be, if there's any type of good feeling you get from that, if you just know that your job is completely unnecessary and you do it your whole life, you can imagine, you know, the visual we have, somebody clocking in and going in and sitting there and burning 8 hours and going home. That's 8 hours of your time you're spent doing something that it doesn't matter, right? That's probably not the best feeling in the world, right? Now, are there people who would be completely fine with that? Of course there are. There would be people who would say, yeah, that is the job for me, and give me that for 30 years, and I'll be happy, and I don't even care, right? There are, of course, people like that, right? The question is, on average, is that what people would want, right? Or would they say, you know, I don't even know what the point is of this job. I'm going to look for another one, something more interesting, right? Something that I can really do something, make a difference. I mean, there's a whole nonprofit sector out there that has really emerged because we're a wealthy nation, and people say, I want to make a difference. I want to feel like, you know, I've got this interest. I want to help people from this. It might not be a for-profit company, but I like to be involved in this, right? And somebody just, instead of being in something that they can basically do nothing all day long, they go over where they're going to have to really do some work, but it might be rewarding, right? And so opportunities and challenges in a market economy, but you have to deal with both of them. And the question is, you know, is it a net gain in the end, right? Okay. And the last question was, you take the Hicks article, What Business Ethics Can Learn from Entrepreneurship, and the Baumel 1990 article, Entrepreneurship, Productive, Unproductive, and Destructive, those two ideas together, and then explain how the rules of the game encourage value creation and win-win exchanges. How can the rules of the game? They certainly could do the opposite. Describe how they might foster the virtues consistent with entrepreneurship, according to Hicks. Self-responsible actions based on rational self-interest, a long-run perspective, economic profits in the market economy, and then also discuss the relationship between economic profit, the rules of the game, and then the following things: economic growth, rising living standards, and philanthropy. Okay? And so I wanted you to be able to tie together how basically the rules of the game, the institutions, the tax system, the property rights, even the regulatory burden, right? All these different things. And it can be great or it can be small, right? But can you kind of put together a description of how these things affect actions? And so from the Baumel article, it was, you go back to, say, ancient Rome, and one of you tried to use this example, but you kind of went about it, you remembered it incorrectly, actually. The steam engine in ancient Rome, the fact that it existed and that society didn't get to use it, it wasn't because society didn't want to use it. It was because society did not have the right to actually demonstrate that it would be something that they would want, right? The only customer was the emperor, right? So that's why it wasn't all across society for different people to use, right? And in the beginning, of course, it would be only the well-to-do that could afford to get this new thing, just like the cell phone in 1980, only rich people and drug dealers, right? Because there was money there, right? We're using cell phones. And the old joke used to be the pagers. You know, if somebody was, even in my high school, 1990, somebody's walking around with a beeper, your first thought was, That's drug dealing, right? You know, nobody else back then had, except a doctor, right? A doctor had a beeper, a drug dealer had a beeper. A few other people, of course, were gross generalization, but they weren't very common, right? I ended up getting a job in insurance. I had to carry one 24/7. I was on call all the time, right? Paramedics might be, you know, but this had to grow over time. The market had to grow over time, right? So ancient Rome, there was no, you know, freeholders in society were the minority. Most people didn't have rights to things like this, right? So it wasn't even a question of would they want it. You can't have it. It doesn't matter if you want it or not, right? We have said that you're not going to have this, right? And so explain how that affects innovation, if that's the case, right? All right. Okay, I won't go any more into that. So if you have other questions on the exam, certainly come and talk to me. Let's see. So we had, okay. I think I've covered everything. The next thing I'm going to assign is the actual, I break the market research paper into basically 3 papers, right? There's a demand paper that I want you to write. There's a supply paper I want you to write. And then there's that whole entire thing, right? Another part of that, though, is the first 4, the dream, vision, mission, and purpose, right? It's on the front of the guidelines for the white paper, right? Which is not part of necessarily either demand or supply, but will be a part of the whole paper. So look for the discussion post that'll be for Thursday's session, and it'll pretty much be the demand paper, and I'll have that in there. And so more in-depth work and writing about the demand aspects of your business idea. Let's see, there's something else. Oh yeah, do not forget, next week, we will not meet Tuesday, we're going to meet Thursday at 9:25 in the finance lab for the guest speaker, and I hope to be able to record it. And those of you who have an excused absence from that, I posted on YouTube, hopefully.
What room is that?
It's, the finance lab is down on the first floor. The dean's office, you come in, he's got the ticker. If you look through the window, that's the finance lab. It just happens to be where my...
First room on the right if you're walking in the building.
Yeah, exactly. That's where my class is before this one. It's in the finance lab. This is where, during my class before this. Yeah. All right. Thank you.